Welcome, everyone. We're delighted that you've joined us today for the All Children Reading, a Grand Challenge for Development EdTech Expo for Asia Pacific. We are excited to be with you today because you are the first of All Children Reading's 3 closing EdTech Expo events. Next week, we will hold an expo for Africa, Europe. So if you have colleagues there, please tell them to sign up for this virtual event. And then in September, we'll have an in-person expo in Washington, D.C. But Asia Pacific friends, you are getting to hear things first before the rest of the world. My name is Michelle Utman from All Children Reading, a Grand Challenge for Development, coming to you from Washington, D.C. Now that you've met me, we'd love to meet you. So if you'd like, please introduce yourself by sharing what organization and country you're joining from in the chat. While we may be joining from distant corners of the globe, there is one thing that we all have in common: a commitment to the vision of a world where we have all children reading. For those of you who have been part of the All Children Reading community for years, we're going to celebrate with you today what we were able to accomplish together and highlight the work many of you have done. If you work in education, you'll hear of some of the most promising solutions for integrating education technology to support your education programming. If you're from the Ministry of Education, a policymaker, or a donor government or organization, you'll also hear of our learnings and research that can support your decision-making and hopefully address many pain points you may be experiencing. And you'll not just hear things, you'll be able to interact, try out some new ed tech, and gain a new skill during our breakout sessions, which include ed tech demos and workshops. To find out those breakout session options, you can go to the menu on your screen and choose Schedule, All Sessions, and then select a category, Demos or Workshops, then click Add for the session you want to join. For some of these breakouts, you'll need to download software or apps before you join the session, so be sure to have a look at those during a break today. Because we're all about reading and reading is all about books, we're calling this chapter of our program Chapter 1, Remembering How Our Story Began. So before we go much further, let's take a step back to the beginning of All Children Reading, especially for those of you who are new, and we'll properly introduce ourselves. All Children Reading, a Grand Challenge for Development, advances EdTech innovation and research to improve reading outcomes for marginalized children in low resource context. It was founded in 2011 as a partnership between the United States Agency for International Development, or USAID, World Vision, and the Australian government, and it's coming to a close in September of this year. Uniquely, a Grand Challenge for Development is like a sandbox for innovation. It sources new solutions, tests new ideas, and then scales what works. So for the past 12 years, we have been seeking innovative solutions to address the global learning crisis, where millions of children are not attaining basic reading skills. We chose to focus on determining how the power of technology, innovation, and partnerships could be leveraged to develop effective and scalable solutions for improving literacy. While this event will focus on showing you what we learned and what you can use to enhance your programming, we're also going to be vulnerable and share times we and our innovative awardees didn't get it right the first time, what we learned from it, and how we pivoted or changed. There's value in that too. If you are a social media user, we'd love for you to share what you're learning or what inspires you today on social media using hashtag EdTech Expo 23, which you see in the bottom corner of your screen. So let's get started by taking a look back to when it all began in 2011 with a short video that reminds us how, and most importantly, why our Grand Challenge story began.
The All Children Reading Grand Challenge for Development campaign aims to advance childhood literacy around the world through identification of and leveraging support for scalable, sustainable, and cost-effective innovations that will improve reading outcomes for millions of children in low-income communities.
And we wanted to identify the most creative, most efficient, most promising solutions that could reach not just small communities of people and children, but affect the lives of millions. Over 450 innovators from across the world submitted proposals to our Grand Challenge in Education. We ultimately chose 32 award nominees from 21 countries.
We're going to put training programs on little digital audio players like this one.
We are actually a group of librarians, professional librarians, and we are building public libraries.
We use puppets, music, animation, and different educational objectives such as reading, health, and different things to communicate with young children at an early age in their local language.
I think the Grand Challenge gives the opportunity for people to try out different ideas that they may have had, but that you can incorporate into a large-scale project, etc.
FRAME is a research project to try and put into focus reading acquisition in multilingual environments.
This program is really working with children who are blind or have low vision and ensuring that they have equitable access to quality education.
What we're doing is we're developing a 90-day program that's delivered to parents of pre-literate students in Uganda.
Our goal is to have every child in the developing world be able to access the book that she needs in order to read and grow.
We help children that have never learned to read at the upper primary level from P4 to P6 to break through to basic literacy.
We're creating books, but the way we're doing it is having children themselves write books and read books that other kids have made. And when your peer has written the book, you really want to read it.
I think that actually this is an innovation by itself, that when governments reach out in this fashion, and I believe that other governments could possibly emulate and learn from this experience.
That was how our Grand Challenge began. Now, 12 years later, after holding more than a dozen competitions, resulting in funding the innovative proposals of more than 80 awardees, we have come to where we are today. Let's celebrate the advancements and breakthroughs that we made together, you and us. Our hope is that during these sessions, you will take the best of what we share today to enhance your child literacy programming, or perhaps increase your programming reach to include more children, like children with disabilities. In this chapter 2 of our program, we're celebrating what we achieved together. During this chapter, you'll hear about the 6 focus areas or grand challenges we took on and the innovative solutions developed and tested by our awardees to address gaps and barriers that are often standing in the way of getting all children reading. As you listen, I just want to encourage you to be looking for solutions you could integrate into your work or lessons shared that could inform your work.
Good morning, good afternoon. It's my pleasure to join you virtually today. My name is Rebecca Martinez, and I'm a Senior Education Advisor with USAID, and have the pleasure today of introducing the session on how ACR GCD has made books more accessible to all children. Research shows that children experience greater reading success when learning in a language they use and understand. Yet millions of children around the globe aren't provided with resources in these languages. At least 90% of children with disabilities who reside in countries with high poverty levels do not attend school in any form. And only 1% of books in the low resource countries are published in accessible formats, like large print, audio, braille, or storybooks with sign language videos. This means that even the small number of children with disabilities who do attend schools often do not have a single book they can access, which is why ACR made driving the development and use of accessible teaching and learning materials in underserved languages one of the focus areas of our work. A second focus area was to enhance literacy learning for children with disabilities. As a result of these two focus areas, ACR GCD evolved into one of the largest innovative funds for inclusive education. Notable accomplishments include, with a commitment to open licensing, ACR funded the creation and adaptation of more than 1,350 open source book titles created in 19 underserved languages, including several sign languages. These are available for free use and adaptation on 4 digital library platforms. Content creation was purposely driven at the local level and with the engagement of local disabled persons organizations, resulting in books written by authors who are deaf about the deaf experience. ACR also established a sign language storybook cohort for all awardees of our book creation competition and their local DPO partners, creating an environment for shared peer learning. It's important to realize that making books accessible benefits all learners. The inclusion of sign language, videos for children who are deaf, or human narrated audio for children who are blind not only makes books accessible to children with disabilities, but also provides an opportunity for family or teachers with low literacy levels or who do not know sign language to engage in story time and their child's learning for the first time. Additionally, committed to scaling the sustainable production of accessible books and sign language storybooks, ACR, led by the Rochester Institute of Technology, National Technical Institute for the Deaf, developed a soon-to-be-released standards for sign language storybooks. To learn about these standards, please attend the workshop later in the program. ACR has also spurred the development of the first adapted assessments in Braille and sign language in several underserved languages, and collaborated with the Girls Education Challenge Fund Manager, funded by the UK Foreign Commonwealth and Development Office, to develop the technical brief towards equity in assessment, making standardized learning assessments more accessible for learners with disabilities. I encourage you to join the technical brief workshop later in the program to learn recommendations to help ensure your learning assessments more accurately and reliably measure the learning outcomes of children with disabilities. And to be more inclusive in all opportunities, for the first time, ACR launched a competition that allowed submissions in sign language. ACR could not have achieved all of this without you. On behalf of the ACR GCD partners, thank you to all of those who submitted proposals with innovative ideas, and to the awardees who created books in underserved languages, developed assessments that more reliably and accurately capture learning of all children, and implemented inclusive programming to strengthen literacy outcomes for all children.
All children need books to learn and thrive. But millions of children with disabilities, like those who are deaf, hard of hearing, blind, or have low vision, are being excluded because there's a severe shortage of books they're able to use. Only 1% of books in low-resource countries are published in accessible formats, like audio, braille, large print, or with sign language videos. And often, organisations buying books for education programs don't require these types of books. That's why All Children Reading partnered with Pearson and Project Literacy to fund the Book Boost, Access for All Challenge, a competition that awarded innovators for developing tools for anyone to create accessible books and working with publishers to more easily and affordably adopt accessible publishing standards. Here's how you can help. If you're a publisher, commit to adopting accessible publishing standards. If you're buying books for your education programs, require books that meet the needs of every child. View our research and resources at allchildrenreading.org/bookboost.
Can help you attain your aspirations for inclusive education in reaching children with disabilities. My name is Leah Maxon. I'm a Senior Inclusive Education Advisor in the Center for Education at the United States Agency for International Development, or USAID. I'm representing All Children Reading, a Grand Challenge for Development, a partnership of USAID, World Vision, and the Australian government. For the past 12 years, the All Children Reading Grand Challenge for Development, or ACR GCD, has been advancing EdTech innovation and research to improve reading outcomes for marginalized learners, including learners with disabilities in low resource settings. Education is the cornerstone of development. It leads to better health, better employment opportunities, and safer and more stable societies. Enhancing literacy for children with disabilities is paramount to ensuring their access to quality education. In this panel, you'll learn from experts, including disabled persons organizations and award-winning innovators of ACR GCD, about the opportunities EdTech presents for disability inclusive education. However, getting EdTech into education programming and reaching children with disabilities is hard, and there are many complexities and challenges to overcome. Today's panel will share what has worked well in practice, ideas for scaling inclusive education EdTech, and pitfalls to avoid. The panel will also discuss how engaging disabled persons organizations strengthens the reach and impact of EdTech for literacy development. I also encourage you to explore USAID's Education Links website, where you can find several resources on information and communication technology use with learners with disabilities. The website is edu-links.org. Now I would like to introduce today's panelists. Michael Vea is a professor at De La Salle College of St. Benilde in the Philippines and has been involved in developing resources in Filipino Sign Language with support from ACR GCD. And Roberto Dazo is an operations manager with World Vision Philippines. Welcome, Michael and Roberto. Michael, thank you very much. Michael, my first question is going to be for you. We know millions of children have little to no books in languages they use and understand, thereby limiting their right to literacy and quality education. For more than 93 million children with disabilities, the shortage of books is even more severe, as resources, if available at all, often lack accessible formats, meaning that children with disabilities who attend school often still lack critical teaching and learning materials. To address this gap, one of ACR GCD's competitions sought to create open source books in some of the most underserved languages children use and understand, resulting in the creation of over 1,350 titles in 19 underserved languages, 9 of which are local sign languages. These books obtained Creative Commons licenses, which allow the public permission to use the content creator's work under copyright law. So, Michael, we know that you have worked on 2 ACR GCD funded awards, both to produce Filipino Sign Language storybooks and a follow-on prize to promote, distribute, and drive usage of the storybooks. Tell us a little bit about how the books your team created are addressing challenges in inclusive education in the Philippines.
Okay, here in our team, in the Philippines, we have partnered with RIT and NTID team to collaborate with them in working on this project. So first, we have a project called Begin with Books, and that's our first project. So the goal of the project is really to make sign language storybooks with sentences and translation and translated into FSL. And then we send that to RIT and NTID to create websites or a platform where the children and parents and teachers can access. And then we upload that into that system or platform. Around more than 150 storybooks have been completed and developed also, but most are signed in FSL. And also, after Begin with Books project, we then worked on project with ACR. The goal is, so the title of the project is sign language books in action. So the goal of the project is to develop storybooks, and then we would send that over to different deaf children, deaf schools specifically, and we have around more than 100 students who've watched those materials and storybooks. Also, we have about 30 teachers for the deaf who have received EPUB with sign language stories. So those sign language storybooks is still being used in different classrooms as well. So meaning before, there is really a challenge with the teachers having no access to these materials with sign language storybooks. But now, so the most that they are using are fitted to hearing students. So access is really a challenge. So yeah, our team gave access to deaf children to read and how to use their language. And now we have partnered with different schools as well. And we are glad because we have available resources, free resources at that, for them to be able to use in their classroom teachings. And also the parents can also use that to converse with their children. So how do we make all those storybooks? We have two steps. First, we developed sign language stories that are important for the teachers and also for the parents that they can access for free. And also, we have developed a website entitled Deaf World Around You. So this is really very, very helpful because then they can just navigate on the screen. The children can just read and watch videos. That would really encourage them to be interested in reading. And also, we have developed videos, a YouTube account where there are stories that are available to be watched online. Because in some areas here in the Philippines, really the challenge is the connectivity, especially in far-flung areas in the provinces specifically. So the connection is really a problem, and hence the connectivity. But here in the cities, we have better connectivity they can access. But for those remote areas, like for example in Bohol, really there are some areas that has no connectivity, or the challenge is that connectivity is really a challenge. So our idea to solve the problem is to use videos, YouTube videos, and also to add to that, we have developed EPUBs they can download and be sent out to the teachers and the students for their personal readings, and that does not need internet connection. So that's what our team did to solve the challenge. So it's really an amazing work from the team, and with the ACR, we thank them very much for trying to develop all these materials for the deaf children.
In the last couple of minutes of this panel, I would like to turn to Roberto, and Roberto ask, can you share about World Vision Philippines' approach?
Hi, Leia. Yes, in fact, actually, we were involved in Bohol, and we joined actually one of the reading camps there, and we were actually in discussion with Michael's team, and also we had one meeting in Manila actually together with RTI, and we even discussed some of the pain points. You're right, but first for World Vision, as a global organization, we have a common purpose, which is serving the most vulnerable children. In the Philippines, we've been here operating for how many years now? And currently we have our 5-year strategy, which is until 2025, that highlights education as one of our technical programs aimed at improving learning outcomes of children 5 to 17 years old. And along with its implementation, we have experienced that indeed vulnerability comes in different forms, but children with disabilities and those who are deaf and deprived of a language face unique challenges, thus needing a unique intervention as well. But recognizing the importance of reaching out to them, World Vision is now putting efforts to improve its programming and initiatives that would allow them to receive the much needed interventions. Another challenge, we have shared this actually with RTI and the Michael's team, is really about locating, mapping, identifying, and engaging children with disabilities and their families. World Vision Philippines currently tracks only disabilities of those who are enrolled in the program. So there is also a need to collaborate with local governments, schools, and other partners to come up with data set complete with information on children's disability. Another is regards to social norms, because people with this, some parents do not want their children with disability getting involved in community activities in fear of being bullied or discriminated. So our initial engagement with Deaf Boholano Society presents a promise of working together to support our initiatives. There was already a discussion of developing a memorandum of agreement with DBS for technical cooperation on capacity building of staff and local partners. As I said, World Vision has been working for more than 65 years now, and currently runs school and community-based reading camps in the National Capital Region, in Manila, and in Bohol regions. Our after school reading camps are part of our Unlock Literacy Core project model. Accessible, open source digital storybooks will allow us to adapt and create more content for children in reading camps, and also more inclusively reach children with disabilities so that they can fully participate in our reading camps. EdTech, such as born accessible digital books, do what printed books cannot, so that all children in our reading camps can both improve their reading and begin to love to read for pleasure. We know that parental support is critical to children's achievement of learning outcomes, yet the reality on the ground is that many parents themselves have low levels of literacy and cannot fully engage in their children's learning. So I have discussed many barriers, but we cannot address all those barriers through one project, but through one project we can break ground and addressing other complex challenges that affect children's learning outcomes.
Thank you very much, Roberto, and thank you to Michael, both for sharing the very important work that your organizations are doing. I encourage everyone to go to the All Children Reading Grand Challenge for Development website to learn more about the really important work that is happening in the Philippines. And thank you for joining us today. Bye, everyone.
Thank you, Leia, and thank you, Michael.
That was a video used to announce one of our competitions specifically to enhance reading outcomes for children who are deaf. The competition is now over, but some of the presenters today are awardees from that competition. Next, you'll hear about our work on foundational literacy and family and community engagement.
Hi, my name is Leonardo Hosh. I'm the Associate Vice President for Child Protection and Education at World Vision US. I'm one of the founding members of All Children Reading Grand Challenge and have been overseeing the Grand Challenge on behalf of World Vision since 2011. The earliest years of a child's life presents tremendous opportunity to support literacy and life skills, building a foundation for a lifetime of learning and fulfillment. Yet only 17% of children in low-income countries are enrolled in preschool programs. The earliest years of a child's life present a tremendous opportunity to support literacy and life skills, building a foundation for a lifetime of learning and fulfillment. Yet only 17% of children in low-income countries are enrolled in preschool programs. While technology can contribute to a wider access to learning, our landscape review revealed very few free open source technology solutions for primary emergent literacy skills. To address these grand challenges, All Children Reading sourced and tested innovative approaches for improving early childhood and early grade literacy and development. These solutions involved a continuum of critical and often underutilized actors. Those include parents, caregivers, teachers, schools, community members, and policymakers, with the goal of empowering each of them to strengthen early childhood education programs and resources. Our Ready to Read competition funded 3 awardees to equip parents, caregivers, and early education facilitators with literacy and learning tools to help children thrive. They implemented existing or adapted technology solutions and activities that enabled marginalized children to build foundational language and literacy skills at home and at school, and supported parents, caregivers, teachers, and facilitators with resources and tools to assist in filling gaps in early learning among children, especially to COVID-19 and other crises. You will learn more about these projects in the next section. All Children Reading, together with our external evaluator School to School International, published a study entitled Engaging Families and Communities to Support Students' Reading Skills and Development, which is available on All Children's Reading website. The study examines the approaches and impact of 4 All Children Reading funded projects focused on improving the engagement of families and communities in children's reading, including a case study highlighting promising practices. On behalf of All Children Reading partners, I offer our thanks to the innovators who submitted proposals and tested new approaches or solutions to strengthen the important work of ensuring all children have the opportunity to learn and read. We can now all stand on the shoulders of their learnings to enhance our education programming. Beyond All Children Reading, World Vision remains interested in future partnerships, which is an expression of our larger commitments to education, including our support to the Education in Emergency Commitment to Action and the Foundational Learning Commitment to Action under the Transforming Education Summit, as well as the Global Disability Summit Charter for Change and others. Those commitments and collective efforts will contribute to the global common good and ensure children's well-being, which is the core of World Vision's mission and vision. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Ritika Lakot, and I'm a Senior Program Manager with the Asia Foundation's Let's Read program. Growing up in Nepal, I was fortunate to be surrounded by a family that cared deeply about education and who were able to support me, making sure I learned to read. I remember being in our kitchen and my mother saying, "You need an education so you can stand on your own feet." I'm thankful to my family because this wasn't the case for all kids. And now, it's wonderful to see more families in Nepal have these same positive attitudes towards reading and education. Yet many kids still do not have access to storybooks and the early reading skills that set them up for success in school. Many families although they deeply care about their kids' future, do not have the resources or knowledge to bring more opportunities for reading and learning during this critical period in their kids' lives. Our project, Ready to Read and Play, brought these opportunities to underserved communities in Kirtipur municipality within Kathmandu, Nepal. The premise for the project is straightforward. Kids need books, and they need books in languages they speak at home and the books that they can relate to. So that is what we did. Working with our incredible partner, Children Workers in Nepal, and local early childhood education specialist, Dr. Meenakshi Dahal, we created a fun and engaging ECE curriculum that aligns with the Nepal government standards, and we held weekly sessions for kids, parents, and their families in all 10 wards of Kirtipur municipality. Each week, kids would come with their families, and they not only get to listen to passionate facilitators share fun and imaginative stories to read aloud, but they also learn basic letter recognition, print concepts, and vocabulary through play-based activities. Through the project, kids showed improvements in letter identification and oral comprehension. By end of the project, around 80% of the children were able to identify more than 15 out of 20 letters, which was an increase of 10% from when the project started. These were great results to see, but for us, the most exciting and challenging part of that project was leveraging the Let's Read digital library to encourage the parents, the aunts and uncles, the grandparents, the families to keep reading with their kids at home and supporting a stronger connection between families and their kids' education. This was the key to the project. How can we use technology to support sustainable reading and learning at home? We know that digital access to books is far more sustainable and scalable than print, but even with the high prevalence of smart devices in homes, there are still significant barriers to families using these resources. Our Let's Read team has seen this not just in Nepal, but in Cambodia, the Pacific Islands, and many other countries we're working. What we're most proud of with Ready to Read and Play is our team's ability to blend the print and digital aspects of the project. Families were provided with print versions of the books, but we also had QR codes which links directly to the digital versions to encourage families to explore the digital versions of the storybooks. On the Let's Read digital library, we ensured there were audio versions with synchronized text highlighting for all the books we used, so families that were fully comfortable reading the books, print or digital, could listen and follow along. We created Viber and Facebook groups to provide weekly reminders to families. We also created short video clips so families could rewatch or watch if they missed the session what the weekly lesson was about. This took a lot of communication and constant communication to help families become comfortable and have the confidence to access these digital resources. Over the length of the project, though, we saw families become more comfortable to access these digital resources. As we continue to work in this space with these communities in Kirtipur and beyond, and as other organizations work with similar communities, whether in Nepal or elsewhere, our message is to integrate technology in ways that fit the context of the communities we're working within. It's a lot of hard work and takes patience within the process. For us, along with the immediate impact on kids' improvement in readiness for school, this success in supporting the family's confidence to access resources and support their kids' education at home was a huge win for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you, Leo and Ritika. Have you all been enjoying hearing from our awardees and our partners today? I hope so. And the good news is that there's more to come. Next, you're going to hear about the work we did in the focus areas of solutions for education in emergencies, as well as the focus area of education data. And that includes hearing from our external evaluator, School to School International, as well as from All Children Reading on the topic of EdTech for literacy, what worked, what didn't, and what you need to know. But first, let's hear from our partner, the Australian government.
Hello, My name is Luke Hartley. I'm based in Canberra, Australia, where I work with the Australian Government's Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade. The final two focus areas of all children's reading work that I have the pleasure to introduce are 1, sustaining education and literacy opportunities for children affected by conflict or crisis, and 2, leveraging data to support decision-making, analysis, and accountability in global education. All children reading solutions look to support the 1 in 11 children worldwide who are out of school. 34 million of these children live in conflict-affected countries. ACR funded apps, software, and research to improve the use of education technology available in emergency settings. Now, no one here will dispute the importance of data. EdTech and related ACR data informs evidence to policy and decision-making, and will continue to do so. This is one of the great legacies of the Grand Challenge. Our competitions created a sandbox for innovation, absorbing risk across the education sector. Risk is inherent to innovation, and data plays a key role in addressing this. Australia is proud to partner with USAID and World Vision for the All Children Reading Grand Challenge. Our partnership was established in 2011 at a time when research was scarce on EdTech's relationship to improve child literacy, particularly in emergency contexts. With its focus on disability inclusion, All Children Reading predates the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, and in particular SDG 4, inclusive and equitable quality education for all. Now, I note many All Children Reading achievements occurred during the pandemic, and many of these serviced emergency contexts. I can't name every achievement we made in these two focus areas, but here are a few. The Edu app for Syria competition sourced 2 gaming apps, Feed the Monster and Entura and the Letters, which improve Syrian out-of-school children's foundational literacy skills and improve their psychosocial well-being. Curious Learning scaled the Feed the Monster literacy gaming app to more than 50 languages for more than 800,000 users globally. These apps have since supported out-of-school learners in other emergency and conflict-affected countries like Afghanistan and the Ukraine. Our Tech Prize, #NoGenerationLost, an effort to ensure children affected by the crises in Syria and Iraq have access to education, funded Asafia Education Technologies to deliver 100 adventures in science and life. These audible, leveled, and illustrated ebooks cover multiple STEM disciplines. They're available in Arabic and English and are free to read, use, translate, and adapt on the Global Digital Library and Bloom Library. As a personal reflection, I can report that my family and I adore reading these books together. I'll also mention the Begin With Books awardees, 46 accessible storybooks in 12 languages, including 4 sign languages. And finally, the Kenyan Sign Language video storybooks ran twice daily on national television and were included in the Kenyan Institute of Curriculum Development's term learning activities. I also acknowledge some of the research we conducted to identify and analyze the effects of technology on literacy. These are now available for all and include 10 external evaluations of technology-based early grade reading activities. Our collaboration with the Girls Education Challenge, funded by the FCDO to publish Towards Equity and Assessment as a technical brief. And finally, all Children Reading awardees who contributed to the 2023 Global Education Monitoring Report, focused on technology and education and due for release tomorrow. On behalf of all Children Reading partners, I'd like to acknowledge and thank these and other innovators who've dreamed, planned, piloted, and advanced child literacy innovation globally. I thank all of you for joining us today and look forward to learning more about these apps, software, and research in the coming breakout sessions.
Hi, my name's Amy Reeves. I work with an organization called School to School International, and I'm going to be sharing with you all today some lessons learned about measuring EdTech for literacy. So as I mentioned, I work with an organization called School to School International. We are an international development organization dedicated to improving the lives of girls, boys, and their communities worldwide through access to quality education. We were we have been the monitoring, evaluation, research, and learning partner for All Children Reading through round 2, which began in 2014, and also in round 3, which began in 2020. Our core activities during our partnership have been to conduct project evaluations, both baselines and endlines. We have adapted EGRAs, or early grade reading assessments, including adapting tools for learners with disabilities. We have built awardee capacity to conduct project level monitoring and evaluation. We've also provided technical assistance on project level M&E. We supported the ACR partners to finalize the round 3 results framework and indicators. We also developed and implemented a collaboration, learning, and adapting framework and a learning agenda. We also developed project scalability assessments, and we conducted a child functioning module teacher version validity study in Nepal. So over the next few minutes, I'm going to share some of the lessons learned about measuring reading and language outcomes for EdTech projects, some of our lessons learned around measuring scalability of EdTech projects, and some lessons learned around building awardee monitoring, evaluation, research, and learning capacity. So I do want to highlight I'm going to go through this relatively quickly, but we have a lot of resources and evaluations and summative reports that are available on the All Children Reading website. These include baseline reports, endline reports, pilot reports, and like I said, summative round 2 level reports. In terms of measuring reading and language outcomes, I just wanted to provide a bit of a snapshot of some of the high-level learnings from round 2 of ACR, specifically in regards to letter name identification, letter sound identification, and oral reading fluency effect sizes. So these 2 graphics come from our summative report on round 2's awardee evaluation. So you can definitely look at that report to find out more. But just to highlight that on letters identification, we did see quite large effect sizes, large threshold being 0.8 across the board for the projects that measured this particular skill. And for oral reading fluency, we saw more small effect sizes, but in some cases did see relatively large effect sizes, specifically on the Reading Beyond Sight project, which was implemented in the Philippines with learners who are blind. So when we think about some of the opportunities or the positives about measuring reading and language outcomes, I would say by investing in rigorous research across round 2 and round 3, ACR and School to School really were able to build the evidence base. We conducted at least 15 baseline evaluations, or baseline/endline evaluations of EdTech projects. Many of these evaluations focused on historically marginalized populations. So for specifically those projects that were working with learners who had disabilities. We conducted those evaluations in India, Lesotho, Morocco, Nepal, Philippines, and Rwanda. And you can see a photo in the bottom of a young learner being assessed using an early grade reading assessment. She appears, I believe has low vision, so she's using large print stimuli. We also we're able to build the capacity of local researchers. So through all these evaluations, we used project staff and local researchers. And so we conducted enumerator trainings in which we were able to really build their skill set, specifically around how to assess learners with disabilities. You can see in the top photo, we have a group of enumerators in Nepal. And one of the enumerators there is like a master trainer who is deaf and who was able to train his colleagues. And we also put increased focus on implementation fidelity and dosage, which really allow us as a community to understand how specific components of a project were able to impact reading outcomes. We did have some challenges. There is difficulty of attribution, especially when we worked with populations without a comparison group, which we did for nearly all the projects working with learners with disabilities. In many cases, we were not able to get sufficient dosage measurements. So we really did have some challenges in being able to attribute specific components of the intervention or the intervention in itself to reading gains. In many cases, we were evaluating very complex interventions and interventions that were relatively young in their life cycle, meaning that they hadn't been fully tested or stabilized. You can see the picture on the left is from Papua New Guinea, from the Yumi Read Together project. The conditions are very remote. And the project was working with learners with disabilities. It's very hard to get to the area. There's lots of connectivity issues. And they had some implementation challenges. So when you have these complex interventions and challenges with implementing infidelity, it does make it a challenge to be able to understand the reading and language outcomes that are directly linked to the intervention. And finally, we were measuring a lot of projects that were proof of concept or pilot. So they were not fully tested or stabilized. And it also made it quite difficult to be able to fully understand how those specific projects were contributing to reading outcomes. So in terms of recommendations, we have a few. We would like to ensure that interventions in EdTech are fully field tested before investing in evaluations. So spend a lot of time investing in making sure that the technology works in the specific context, and that all the interventions, including all the training materials, are fully pilot tested and stable before you are trying to measure reading outcomes. It's really important to ensure strong implementation fidelity and dosage tracking. And finally, we would recommend that in order to fully understand the reading outcomes that result from EdTech interventions, to really streamline the interventions to focus just on that EdTech, to sort of take out the other components and really try to work on just isolating the impact of the EdTech itself. In terms of measuring scalability, we conducted a qualitative scalability assessment, us being STS, at Nline for round 2 awardees, and we looked at 7 domains or sort of areas of scalability. And in round 3, we conducted we developed a quantitative and qualitative assessment that was filled out by awardees themselves at baseline and Nline, and we used 5 domains of scale. You can see the domains on the slide here. I won't go into detail, but I will say that you can find more about those domains in our summative report and also in forthcoming round 3 reports. In terms of the high-level lessons learned around scalability, we do strongly believe that baseline scalability assessments can be really helpful in order to help focus an intervention's implementation on the type of evidence needed to be able to prove or understand what components are scalable. But we also think that scalability must be a consideration starting at the design stage. So you should be developing a program that can be where scalability is one of the lenses through which you are designing the project. And I think it's also really important to make note that scalability and what makes a project scalable are still being researched. It's not, nothing's proven yet. So there's still a lot to learn. I believe I'm running a bit short on time. So I think what I'm going to skip to is the recommendations around building awarding moral capacity. So I will say that we think it's quite important based on our experiences from round 2 and round 3 to make sure that projects or awards have dedicated moral staff and that there's an explicit mandate to build capacity of those staff in awards and contracts. Without that, and based on the starting point of some of the awardees, it's really challenging to be able to ensure that that work is done and prioritized. We'd also recommend at the higher level to focus on fewer but more critical indicators. So I think for round 3 specifically, we developed a battery of indicators and which ended up being sort of cumbersome and not all that relevant to all the awardees. So things that should be prioritized obviously are reading gains if you have a stable project, but also around dosage. And making sure projects are being implemented with fidelity. Those are the things that are really going to help understand and isolate the impacts of the interventions on reading outcomes. And lastly, it feels quite important to be able to integrate pause and reflect sessions for awardees so that they are that there's an incentive to utilize monitoring data, project monitoring data, to adapt the design or implementation of a project. So making sure data use is integrated throughout the project lifecycle. And just to plug, one additional relatively large activity that we've conducted under round 3 is to conduct a validity study of the child functioning module teacher version. This report won't be released until probably August or September. But it is a really important piece of empirical research that's going to help us understand whether or not the CFM, the child functioning module teacher version, can be used to disaggregate learners and reading outcomes in Nepal. So there will be, that report, as I mentioned, will be released in August or September, and there will be a dissemination event sharing the high-level findings in mid-August. And that is all I have for now. So I will stop sharing and I believe wrap up.
Hello, my name is Elizabeth Wilson, and I'm the Monitoring and Evaluation Specialist on the All Children Reading Grand Challenge Management Team. This presentation includes lessons learned across 12 years of All Children Reading from the standpoint of the Challenge Management Team, along with some key recommendations. This is meant to be both encouraging and useful information for those who build on the work of ACR in the future. Some successes to celebrate include the numbers. 2.3 million children reached with reading interventions in 49 countries. 1.2 million teachers and caregivers trained to support young learners. 1.8 million teaching and learning materials produced, and more than 2.5 million teaching and learning materials distributed in 113 languages, including sign languages. There were more than 50 evaluations and research reports produced. These tangibly expanded the body of evidence around using EdTech for literacy and are easily accessible on the ACR website and USAID's Development Experience Clearinghouse. Reports include an assessment of the impact of literacy learning games for Syrian refugee children, including Feed the Monster and Intura and the Letters, and project evaluation reports, such as the Stories Project, implemented by Little Thinking Minds in Jordan. Among the most recent ACR publications published in collaboration with the Girls' Education Challenge is a technical brief to make learning assessments more inclusive of children with disabilities and to measure their learning outcomes more validly and reliably. This was based on learnings from ACR funded adaptations of 10 reading assessments to be more equitable, including an early grade reading assessment in Rwanda, recently piloted with children who are deaf and hard of hearing. For the remainder of my time, I'd like to focus on 3 areas of learning and recommendations: creating impact, expanding collaboration, and partnership management. First, on creating impact, specifically supporting learners to achieve improved reading and language development outcomes. ACR learned, drum roll please, that even if innovators are well-informed and the innovations themselves are well-designed, basic implementation issues in the target environment can undermine the project. This was seen in regard to misunderstandings about children's access to tech devices, being an EdTech program, including whether they had access to cell phones and computers. Also, additional literacy supports, such as preschools they were attending or other literacy projects in which they were participating and could influence their reading development along with the ACR interventions they were experiencing. So recommendations, especially for programs dependent on EdTech, include ensuring target populations have access to the necessary devices, simple but true, and that they have screen time, that they have access to a working phone, and there's enough space to download education applications, enough bandwidth to access materials online. Also, making sure to connect well with local educators and families during the design and implementation of the project to know the type of literacy resources available to learners and other programs in which they are participating. Second, ACR learning on expanding collaboration. There was early recognition that a diverse range of solvers was needed to address the complexity of improving literacy outcomes, especially among the marginalized learners. Nevertheless, ACR struggled to attract local applicants and organizations of disabled persons, such as one working with low vision and kids who are deaf and hard of hearing. A recommendation from ACR based on its experience is to identify barriers in the application process and work to eliminate or ease them. For example, ACR engaged a deaf-led communications team to design a targeted marketing and communications tactics and materials to publicize funding opportunities. ACR also simplified the application process itself by offering different funding formats, such as smaller amounts of funding tied to really specific milestones. Also, applicants were permitted to use their own local sign language to submit proposals for ACR funding. The challenge management team is really proud to say that almost half of the applicants for ACR funding and more than a third of those awarded funding were from developing countries. The final learning that I'm going to be mentioning is related to ACR's partnership management. A core learning in this area was around supporting integration. Integration of ACR-funded innovations or solutions within partners' own organizations is critical to their sustainability and the possibility for solutions to continue to mature and scale up beyond ACR. That said, integration does not happen organically. It takes work and potentially some more funding down the line. A recommendation from the challenge management team is to create and reinforce feedback loops. For example, establishing a governance structure to enable partners to consistently represent their organizational goals, communicate progress, and raise critical issues. Another tool ACR used and would recommend having would be to have a point person. So the challenge management team had a person who on a consistent basis met with each partner, and they worked to strategize and track the ACR materials, solutions, and learnings and activities that could be and had been shared within their own organizations. So these learnings and recommendations barely scratch the surface of all children readings learnings. I encourage you to access the All Children Reading website and its research hub to read in more depth the research and evaluation that best connects to the literacy challenges that you are pursuing at allchildrenreading.org. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Amy and Liz. I hope that you gain from the learnings they presented and can use this information from our evaluations and research to support your own decision-making when considering adding EdTech to complement your education programming. And now on to chapter 3 of our program, which is called Catalyzing the Innovations from All Children Reading. As many of you know, one of the challenges of innovation is getting good solutions to go to scale. But next up, you're going to hear from those who have modeled successfully scaling EdTech solutions that were sourced through All Children Reading. So let's have a listen and learn together.
Hello, Creason here from Curious Learning. Thank you for this wonderful opportunity to share a little bit of our story and some of our learnings over the years working together with All Children Reading. So Curious Learning, before it became a nonprofit working globally, was a research project. And the research team of neuroscientists, technologists, user interface experts wanted to test this crazy question of, could children learn to read using touchscreen mobile devices? And even more so, could they learn to read all on their own? Could self-driven learning work? Fast forward 5 years and the All Children Reading EduApp for Syria Grand Challenge is underway. And Curious Learning has learned a whole lot in our field testing, and this app's come along and it ticks almost all the boxes. We are really excited about it, and we figure one of the ways we could work with this piece of content is to create a localization pipeline. The EduApp for Syria, in the wisdom of those who set up the prize, was designed to be open source and Creative Commons, which meant that we could pick it up and work with it almost seamlessly. Very rapidly, we managed to localize the app into 10 languages. And then over the next 2 years, localized it to a total of 50 languages. This proved that using digital as a medium and doing things in a Creative Commons open source way could lead to rapid scalability from a content perspective. That was a wonderful experience and a good partnership for us. However, the next step for us was distribution. How do we get this out there to as many kids as possible? Luckily for us, the environment has continued to be more and more enabling. Proliferation of smartphone devices, connectivity, even in some of the hardest to reach places, has made our approach more viable as time goes on. So much so that we managed to reach 100,000 devices in Ukraine within 100 days of the conflict breaking out last year. So the digital platform offers certain real strategic advantages. Of course, it can't do everything, but we have decided that we hone in on what its strengths are and accelerate that. So, a couple of things that we didn't consider in advance and are worth noting are, one is there's a burden of support and maintenance when you produce a piece of digital content. You know, the platforms upon which we rely, be it web or app-based, and the devices upon which the content resides all evolve and are updated. And in order to remain compliant with the needs of both the platforms and the devices, one has to have a support and maintenance infrastructure behind the content. The other is, we presume that once a piece of content was proven to work and could be scalable at extremely low cost, there would automatically be systemic uptake. That isn't necessarily the case. Our main distribution channel for scale is reaching directly to parents using digital channels and just telling them about the content. The system itself is slow to change and slow to embrace new and innovative solutions. So this is an area in which I think us as a collective will continue to have to work on and chip away at. Innovation does come with risk, and it does mean that risk-averse organizations will be somewhat resistant to working with us immediately. This is an all-hands-on-deck dilemma that we face, which means, you know, our approach is to be laser-like focused on our area of strength, stay focused on our mission, and collaborate as much as possible. You know, don't reinvent things that other people are working on, and support where possible. On that note, we look forward to where all of the different partners of All Children Reading go to in the future. Look forward to collaborating with you, and wish everyone all the best. Thank you for this wonderful opportunity.
Of the first part of our program, and now it's time for you to get involved. We have 2 breakout session opportunities for you next. The first breakout section options are opportunities for you to join an EdTech demonstration. So please go to the menu on your screen and choose sessions and then all sessions to see your options, and then join an EdTech demo of your choice. After the EdTech demos are finished, you'll have a second breakout session opportunity to join a workshop. Again, please review your agenda for your options and then join the workshop of your choice. After the 2 breakout sessions, you'll want to be sure to come back for a closing session where you'll hear from our founding partners, USAID, World Vision, and the Australian government on their vision for EdTech and literacy post All Children Reading. So be sure to come back for that. Until then, enjoy your EdTech demos and your workshop. How were your EdTech demos and your workshop? Did you find an EdTech solution that would enhance your work? Did anyone have an aha moment during your sessions? If you did, please remember to share it on social media using hashtag EdTech Expo 23, or we'd love for you to share just one sentence highlight in the chat so others can hear what you've learned and what were the highlights for you. While you do that, I'll share that we've come to chapter 4, which is casting a vision, the final chapter in our program. This is your chance to hear from our founding partners on their post All Children Reading vision for child literacy and EdTech. So let's have a listen.
USAID has been proud to partner with World Vision and DFAT on ACR GCD over the last 12 years, and to be part of an initiative which has been a leader in identifying EdTech solutions that can serve marginalized populations and those in vulnerable situations to achieve improved learning outcomes. As we close out over a decade of work, This final event provides an important opportunity to celebrate successes and reflect on lessons learned. As you all may know, ACR GCD was conceived as a way of identifying and funding innovators in the ed tech space to develop tools that address the needs of marginalized learners, including those with little or no access to appropriate literacy instruction due to language barriers, disability, or refugee status. While ed tech is now nearly ubiquitous in high-income contexts, when ACR GCD began, there was little evidence on how technology could be used effectively to support learning for the most marginalized and vulnerable populations. The activities and resources ACR GCD has supported promise to improve literacy outcomes for children across diverse contexts who have often been excluded from education systems or not expected to acquire literacy skills. By funding innovative solutions from diverse partners, ACR GCD allowed for all donor partners to learn from small-scale, iterative activities that have generated evidence and research, which is critical to our continued work in this sector. ACR GCD interventions have demonstrated that apps like Enter in the Letters can improve basic literacy skills of children in the most extreme circumstances. ACR GCD has also shown the promise of ed tech for reaching children with disabilities through the development of tools like Sonrisas and Señas created in Nicaragua and the World Around You software, both of which provide resources to deaf learners and their families. Critically, ACR GCD also demonstrated that technology on its own is not enough. Many of the most successful interventions engage teachers, parents, and community members in order to ensure that tools were used effectively and achieved their intended results. ACR GCD has also highlighted some of the key challenges that remain to ensuring EdTech is accessible and effective for all learners. Perhaps the biggest challenge remains identifying the ways to scale and sustain tools in contexts where the need is great, but resources are limited. Another key lesson from ACR GCD was the importance of partnerships. Coming out of the pandemic, there is increased recognition that tackling educational challenges will require cooperation and alignment between donors, the private sector, governments, and other stakeholders. In this sense, ACR GCD was an early leader in bringing donors together to partner in a way that expanded the reach and potential of each awardee beyond what would have been possible in any single donor-funded activity. Lessons learned from ACR GCD about how to build and encourage stronger partnerships should influence our work in the future. While this partnership is coming to an end, it's clear that EdTech will continue to play a critical role in our sector. At USAID, we know that EdTech is an indispensable tool for ensuring that we meet our goal of improving learning outcomes for all learners. ACR GCD has demonstrated that EdTech can help develop sign language skills for children in remote rural contexts, teach sound letter recognition to children in crisis and conflict contexts, and give children access to books for the first time in a language they use and understand. We anticipate that the many different tools that ACR GCD has helped fund, and which are available on EduLinks, will continue to be used both in USAID work as well as that of local partners and stakeholders. By supporting EdTech that is available to all and free of cost, we've taken an important step towards ensuring that technology is a tool that serves all learners and not just a few. As ACR GCD comes to an end, I want to take this opportunity to express our thanks to our fellow donor partners and to the many innovators, teachers, and learners who were part of this journey. We look forward to seeing how the innovations that were developed through ACR GCD continue to support learning for all.
Pleased to be at this EdTech Expo event for the All Children Reading Program and share these plenary remarks with our colleagues from Australia's Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade, DFAT, and USAID. I would once again like to extend World Vision's appreciation to DFAT and USAID for the strong partnership over the past 12 years in this very unique program. I am pleased to see the incredible level of effort and collaboration of the All Children Reading team, innovators, government counterparts, and other partners that have organized these events for the Asia Pacific region and for the Africa Europe region. The amount of progress that has been made through this program across more than 45 countries is commendable. When I spoke a year ago, my hope was that we finish strong and finish well with these 3 rounds of investment in this grand challenge, and I believe that we have done just that. Let me highlight a few achievements that I think are important. First, we increased the number of high-quality digital storybooks in more than 50 languages, including National Sign Language, where there were previously existing little or no reading materials for children. Second, we raised awareness and promoted EdTech in inclusive education for all children, especially children with disabilities, as well as their caregivers, parents, and teachers. EdTech is a game changer in education and a life changer, particularly for children that are blind or deaf. Third, we tested teaching methodologies with foundational literacy using EdTech applications together with the parents, caregivers, and teachers of young preschool children. And fourth, we created a community of innovators and friends of the All Children Reading Grand Challenge, a vast network of more than 200 different organizations and more than 5,000 subscribers that follow our newsletters. And the information has made a significant contribution. But despite these wonderful achievements, I would like to remind us all that the difficult years of the pandemic impacted communities and children tremendously, and that gains that had been made in education have taken a step back. The UN Sustainable Development Goal 4, ensuring universal primary and secondary education for every child, continues to guide us, and we must continue our investment in education, including investment in modern methodologies, including digital platforms to eradicate illiteracy. The good news and what heartens me is that there are donors, agencies, and NGOs at this event that are actively helping address this challenge and can continue promoting the legacy tools, research, and solutions developed and funded through the All Children Reading Grand Challenge. At World Vision, we continue to increase our support and investments in child protection and education to reach millions of children across 64 national offices around the world. Our education programming continues to be a strategic priority. We have a special focus on girls' education and use of EdTech to help teachers and children with disabilities. World Vision has positioned itself to take advantage of this investment through new proposals and ideas in close collaboration with the private sector, especially technology or innovation firms focused on investing to close the digital gap for billions of children without access. Finally, World Vision commits to integrating the solutions into World Vision's education programming and applications, such as the use of the Bloom Reader, Feed the Monster, and Antura. We will integrate ACR's legacy through the World Vision International Education website that will ensure ACR's tools and solutions are used more broadly by the World Vision Partnership in the coming years. We will pursue new funding opportunities through USAID and other agencies that focus on teaching and learning, book supply issues, and most importantly, quality education programming using digital approaches. We will coordinate with public and private fundraising teams to incorporate solutions into future awards with private donors, foundations, and other donors who are interested in education as a life-changing gift to lift children out of poverty. We will pursue funding opportunities for action research in the use and uptake of supplementary digital learning materials and storybooks. And finally, we will raise awareness and advocate for greater public access to digital learning materials through our participation in UNESCO's Digital Transformation Collaborative Initiative that will be launched at the next General Assembly. I want to finish by thanking Rebecca Martinez, representing USAID Education, and Aidan Wyatt and Luke Hartley, representing DFAT, who are here for this meeting. I look forward to future opportunities and ideas for new partnerships. Let me finish by reminding us all that we need to let children learn to read so that they can read to learn, and that we are all part of the solution. Thank you.
Good afternoon from Australia. My name is Aidan Wyatt, Assistant Secretary for Global Education Investments in the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade in Australia, and overseeing All Children Reading and the Global Partnership for Education. Australia is a proud supporter of All Children Reading and its achievements that have been the focus of today's session. We are committed to supporting quality and inclusive education through our bilateral and regional investments right across the Indo-Pacific and globally through multilateral forums. Achievement of the UN Sustainable Development Goal for quality education and its targets is a central commitment shared by all in this webinar. In considering a post-All Children Reading vision for children's literacy and EdTech, supporting affordable and accessible quality education in developing countries remains an unfinished agenda. We know learning poverty persists, and foundational efforts to lift literacy and numeracy are needed to build the next generation of human capital, which is so essential for these countries to both survive and thrive in their development trajectories. We know that partner countries face significant challenges securing financing for their locally led education agenda. In our region, many countries are still recovering from the unprecedented economic and social impacts of COVID-19, both on their economies and their education systems. So more quality finance from all sources is essential. These same countries are also at the forefront of climate change and its impacts. We have a real opportunity to spotlight the role of education and connections to climate change at this year's COP28, helping to shift the narrative and see education as an investment rather than a cost to be met. In countries that are facing these types of myriad of challenges, we know that girls, poor and marginalised children, and children living with a disability are often the most vulnerable. So inclusive and equitable education systems remain essential to ensure all children are equipped to succeed in the future. Australia continues to seek opportunities to connect our programs with all children's readings, tools, evidence, and resources that have been built over this incredible partnership. We are extremely proud that round 3 prizes, Begin with Books, Unrestricted, and Ready to Read, include awards supporting partner countries in the Indo-Pacific region. And 2 of these, Unrestricted and Ready to Read, are targeted investments supporting Pacific partner countries. We're also proud of ACR's blended finance model that builds connections and engages a number of additional partners across the education and tech ecosystem, including the private sector, by leveraging co-investment to extend its reach. Blended finance are collaborative partnerships that can strengthen education outcomes despite the challenges I mentioned earlier on global financing. So co-financing contributions came from a range of partners, including USAID missions, donor partners such as Norway and the World Bank, private foundations such as the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation and Asia Foundation, universities such as the University of California, Berkeley, and of course the private sector with Orange, Intel and Google Books, to name a few. DFAT has worked hard to include a focus on children with disabilities in round 2 that then is carried into this current round 3, really driving improved learning outcomes for children living with disabilities as a core priority. In 2021-22, ACR became one of the largest innovation funds focused on reading for children with disabilities, with over US $4.5 million invested in inclusive education. The Begin with Books and Ready to Read prizes included awardees producing materials specifically targeting children with disabilities. DFAT continues to help communicate the value of the partnership to our country programs and broader international audiences. Let me share a couple of brief examples as I finish. In Papua New Guinea, UMI Read Together trade local by training facilitated by local inclusive education resource centres, and the PNG Assembly of Disabled Persons included 50 teachers on UDL principles, support for children with disabilities, use of Bloom Reader, and using the whole child checklist screening tool and involved 30 locally based youth community promoters over 4 days. In Nepal, the LEARN project has received government approval to commence work with government education stakeholders and local organisations for people with a disability to develop a framework for integrating ICT and universal design for learning principles into government guidelines and teacher professional development. We look forward to seeing ACR's influence being reflected in future global education reports, technical briefs, and digital platforms to maximise uptake for all. Thank you.
You've just seen a summary of our work and some of the many solutions ACR has funded and is now offering to the global education community, to you. That video reminded us that the need is urgent and great before and especially now as we're emerging from COVID, as we now face a generational crisis in child literacy. Our goal was that the solutions we funded contribute to the ultimate goal of ensuring all children have the tools, resources, and support they need to learn to read. To do that, we need you to be part of the solution. I really hope today that you found something you can integrate into your work to benefit children, to change the future of education programming, to change the life of a child so they can reach their full potential, and to be part of the solution so that together we can get all children reading. For more information about anything you've heard today, please visit our website, which is allchildrenreading.org. And again, thank you for joining us today. Together, let's be part of the solution to get all children reading.